The SR-71 was triple sonic. In other words, it go over Mach 3. Max recorded altitude was 85,200 some feet. And there are several of us that have gone higher than that.
Pilot Tony Bavacqua is one of a select group of men to fly the SR-71, a titanium spy plane built during the height of the Cold War that could take photos of the ground with 12-inch resolution from 90,000 feet. Literally faster than a rifle bullet. Even missiles were too slow to catch it.
I was the first person in the SR-71 get shot at, and it was over Hanoi. You got an airplane that's going 2,300 miles an hour, and it's very, very difficult to even come close. They figure that the missile exploded about a mile below me, and we're in and out of there. No time. Thank God.
The cost of such speed was that the SR-71 needed to be refueled every 2 hours. But there was a slower alternative called the U-2. Bavacqua is one of only 12 pilots to have flown both operationally.
I was very proud of being a U-2 pilot because of what we have done and what we're still doing. It's just a magnificent platform, does excellent reconnaissance.
Still widely used today, nearly 60 years after its introduction, pilot endurance limits U-2 flight time to 12 hours.
It's pretty demanding on their bodies. They have to wear a special high-altitude suit for it, and then it whites them out for a good couple of days. It fatigues them quite a bit to go that high.
Manned spy planes are not only limited by human endurance, they also bring the risk of pilot loss. In 1960, Bavacqua's friend, Francis Gary Powers, was shot down while flying a U-2 over the Soviet Union.
It was a propaganda field day for the Russians.
Powers' cover story was that he was on a meteorological flight.
Frank Powers tried to say it was a weather flight, but there's miles of film. And so it was easy to discern what he was doing.
Khrushchev denounced the United States with every epithet in his vocabulary. He summarily rejected all attempts of the West at reconciliation.
Powers was imprisoned in Russia for more than 2 years, creating a major international incident and clearly demonstrating the need for unmanned spy planes.
It was a development from the pilotless aircraft principle. Guidance was by radio from an accompanying aircraft. After reaching altitude,
As early as World War II, once at altitude, airplanes could be controlled by radio signals after the pilot bailed out. But for decades afterwards, before GPS, drones were limited by primitive autopilots and navigation systems. In the 60s and 70s, drones crashed constantly, including the most advanced unmanned aerial vehicle, or UAV, the Aquila drone, that averaged a crash every 20 hours.
It was a small propeller drone that would fly over the battlefield and gather information and beam it back to you. The problem is, back in the 70s, the technology wasn't ready yet. It was a $1 billion program by the time they got just a couple prototypes.
I was frustrated that the U.S. could not make UAVs really work.
Abe Karam is the father of the Predator.
This is one of two small UAVs built in my garage between 1980 and 1983. I was borrowing $18,000 a year from family. That's all we had. Everything was built with the lowest possible technology. We were trying to show that if you design the best you can, then you are going to get performance by design.
On his first prototype, the Albatross, Karam placed the engine and propeller in the rear so they wouldn't interfere with the delicate sensors up front. And the inverted tail is also still visible on its famous descendant.
Down-deflected tails are there to protect the prop, so when it tilts back, it's hitting the skids and not hitting the propeller.
An ex-fighter jet engineer, today Karam designs and builds planes at his company in California. In the 70s, when he started working on drones, he realized that without a pilot in the seat, a whole new world of design possibilities opened up. Other unmanned aerial vehicles of the time were still too closely modeled on manned aircraft.
I said, I don't like what I see. I'm not going to take the engine, and I'm not taking the prop, I'm not taking the landing gear, I'm not taking the computer.
Karam believed that efficiency and lightness were the key to creating an affordable, high-endurance UAV. So first, he gave his craft long wings to prioritize lift over speed.
When you want to be efficient, you want to be like the soaring birds, very long span wings. The albatross is the best gliding bird, is 20 times more span than the cord. And my albatross, the UAV albatross, was close to that.
Karam built the albatross from scratch in his garage. He modified a go-kart engine to burn only 1/10 of a gallon of fuel an hour, and albatross soon evolved into Amber, a 15-foot-long, 28-foot span UAV with 38-hour endurance. Karam relied on seed money from DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Its early investments in artificial intelligence and other technologies led to countless civilian uses and made modern UAVs possible.
In the 1970s and 1980s, with significant DARPA impetus and some DARPA funding, a variety of new technologies emerged, including the Global Positioning System, long-range data links, lightweight computer equipment, and composite materials, as well as satellite communications and digital flight controls. The Albatross, the Amber, were the harbingers of the modern era of UAVs.
We were a total team of 3 people, and we proved a lot of what we wanted to prove. Secretary of the Navy and the head of DARPA, they said, okay, you fly 500 hours, how many are you going to crash? We ended up not crashing any in the 500 hours we did for the military.
Karam's Amber prototype never went into full production. But after a number of incarnations, by the mid-90s, his design became known as the Predator.
Do not handle the missile by the strakes, wings, fins, seeker head, rocket motor, nozzle seal, umbilical connector housing during loading to prevent damage to equipment and or injured personnel.
My UAVs were not meant to be armed. It was really built for the Cold War, when we had the big tactical challenge with so much artillery on their side, so much artillery on our side.
With 2 large armies facing off, UAVs could be used for espionage, but not attack. Then, after 9/11, America started targeting individuals.
Now we are fighting non-state enemies, so it starts making sense to arm the UAV, which is not my intention in the beginning.
In October 2001, an armed Predator changed warfare forever.
I was the commander of the air operations against Afghanistan, where we actually used for the first time a weapon off the MQ-1 Predator. The advantages were enormous, order of magnitude beyond where remotely piloted vehicles had been just 10 years prior in Desert Storm.
Since this initial strike, drones have proven so effective that the Air Force is now training more remote pilots than manned fighter and bomber pilots combined.
So, play on the scenario?
At Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, instructor Major Jason teaches this new generation of pilots.
Adam 03, loud and clear.
The stakes are high when operational, so they begin on video simulators. He invents practice scenarios programmed using Xbox video game controllers.
Adam 09 from Viking 01, you're cleared hot. Stuff that we can't do in the real plane, I can do anything here, because the world's whatever I want it to be. 3, 2, 1, rifle. It's a controlled environment, and we want them to learn here, so that way when they do go operational, You know, they've already made all those mistakes.
Pilot, it doesn't look like I ever turned the laser on, so I don't know where the missile went.
How did that happen? If that would have happened in real world, that'd be a really, really bad day.
Unlike fighter pilots who train for a minimum of 2 years, remote pilots learn to fly their increasingly automated drones in less than one.
The FAA did a study recently that showed that pilots with real flight experience in manned aircraft are actually worse UAV pilots than those that have no flight experience and really come in off the street. You actually bring in a skill set that you don't need and a set of expectancies that you shouldn't have when you're flying a UAV if you came from a manned aircraft. So the Air Force is taking officers off the street with no flight training and putting them through the program, and they've been very successful.
They come here, they never went to pilot training like I did. They're here for a few months and then they have to go operational, so it happens real fast.
Item 09, rifle time of flight, 15 seconds.
And when pilots go operational, despite being half a world away from the action, it all feels very real.
I'd like to throw in copy splash.
It's not like a video game at all. There's no reset button, there's no, there's no turning it off.
In real strikes, like this one in Iraq, technology actually allows drone pilots to see more than manned pilots ever have.
Because we have such a long loader time, there's potential to have eyes on the target that we are going to blow up for hours ahead of time. Then we employ on it, strike the target. And then stick around for another few hours to watch what happens afterwards. And you have to stay there and then stay plugged in and stay focused on the destruction that you just caused from your aircraft.
In 2012 alone, the U.S. carried out hundreds of drone strikes across 4 countries. Afghanistan is the only publicly authorized war, while strikes in Pakistan, Somalia, and Yemen are covert CIA operations performed without putting American lives on the line.
The technology has enabled us to set aside some of the risk factors of sending a pilot in harm's way. So it's meant that we've conducted a lot more strikes that would have been more problematic if we were using manned systems.
The U.S. claims drones have decimated al-Qaeda's top leadership while causing limited civilian casualties. But the facts are hard to come by.
We know fairly well how many strikes are occurring. What we don't know is the details, who the targets were, whether they were actually eliminated, or whether some other people were killed, because verification is very difficult.
There are no fully reliable counts of civilian deaths, but some critics claim that as many as 30% of those killed in the broader drone wars are civilians, and that the strikes turn people against the U.S. and violate international law. After more than 10 years of attacks, the U.S. officially acknowledged its use of drones to target al-Qaeda members in April 2012. When presidential advisor John Brennan gave a speech.
The United States government conducts targeted strikes against specific